welcome to Broadcast Astrology, Insight for Humans. I'm Sara, and this is Lisa, and we're coming to you with our new podcast, here to give you insight, monthly predictive forecasts, and lots of good stuff. But this is our, what is it, Lisa? Take one, take two, take three.
Yeah, it's take three.
Here we are in the
Seriously.
shadow of the eclipse, reconciling all of our blunders because of this Mercury retrograde has just interfered with everything we've tried to put together. So we're giving you a quick note to let you know that we recorded our inaugural podcast without video, but we have a great audio show for you, and we can post the charts so you can take a look. And we hope to see lots more of you in the future.
Yeah, and in the audio version that we recorded that you'll hear in a moment, we say that this is a different podcast, and that has been part of our whole experience that we've been going through the past 24 hours or so. So we're just putting it out there as the eclipse is currently beginning to shadow the sun. And yeah, it just seems like we're very much under the spell of all of the astrological weather right now. And it's exciting. We're excited for all of the things ahead. And we hope you enjoy this little rundown of the eclipse chart. And we'll see you next month.
See you soon.
Bye.
Hello, and welcome to Infinite Astrology, Forecast for Humans. We're your hosts, Lisa and Sara, and we're here to bring you monthly forecasts based on lunation charts, which are a predictive chart that we can use based on the new moon each month, and we'll be interpreting them from the level of mundane astrology, and using a combination of traditional Western astrological techniques as well as 20th century Uranian astrology. So we'll be looking at some dials as well. And we look forward in the future to bringing you other great content, which will include interviews with notable practicing astrologers, some reading. We're going to do some reading, right, Lisa? Maybe some solar return, some cold chart reading, and Q&A sessions. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah,
we've got
a lot of fun ideas, and we can't wait to have all of you join us on this journey. So with no further ado, we will bring up the chart for the solar eclipse that we're about
it's a big one, because the new moon lunation this year falls on this amazing solar eclipse. And here we are channeling our brave Aries energy as we launch an inaugural podcast during Mercury retrograde with all of this other crazy action.
And I will say, I mean, just in case any of you are wondering, we have absolutely run into all of the snafus. So we're grateful to be here and, you know, just working with all of this energy. But this is a big one. And yeah, so let's see. There's a lot to say. We're going to try to kind of keep this condensed to some degree and in more of a useful form for those of you who are listening or watching. And just to give you some context about how solar eclipses work, the interpretation time for these charts typically tends to be about 6 months, because it's going to be about 6 months until we see the next solar eclipse, which will happen on October 2nd, 2024. So that's the amount of time that we're looking at. For most of the lunation chart, new moon charts that we do, they'll tend to just be a month, but this one is special in that the first one we chose to do is an eclipse, so it has that special that longer time duration that we're looking towards. So as many of you are probably thinking about the next 6 months within our country, which this is cast for Washington, D.C., this is going to be the all of the drama and the events that's going to lead up to the elections in November. So
Mhm.
so that's kind of, I think, a lot of the different symbolism and themes that we're seeing as we delineate this chart really focuses around the run up to the elections and how our leaders are acting and how the public's reacting to that and just this dance that we're doing. So
Yeah, so shall we dive in by looking at the American people in this chart,
yeah.
who are represented by the sun, which was
Mhm.
just so crazy to pull this up and see that we are so intricately tied in with this eclipse, especially since this 6 month season is going to see us through a lot of the pre-election drama, like you said.
Yeah,
And there we
absolutely.
are, located in the ninth house.
Yes, we're up in the ninth house, and it's an initial glance, it's very nice because the sun is exalted in Aries, which means that it's held on high, and it's a powerful sun, which means it's a powerful people. And in the ninth house, it's a very positive place to be too. It has a trine aspect to the ascendant, which is very good as well. So at first glance, we see a lot of really positive things coming out of this placement.
At first glance.
Do you want to take us into the rest of it, Sarah?
Where should we go from there? I mean, you cannot help but notice when you look at the chart that this eclipse hits exactly. It's in a perfect partile aspect to Chiron, the wounded healer. And here we are also in the midst of our Chiron return as a country. And
Mhm.
so what's happening right now is really harkens back somewhat to what was on the ground at the inception of our country. And, we talked a little bit at the Lisa, when we did the last podcast with about the Aries ingress chart, but we're also in the midst of this Pluto return. And so there's a lot going on right now that does harken back to what was happening initially in
Yeah.
our country.
Yeah, I think that this chart and the Aries ingress chart and the different transits that we're seeing from the Pluto return to the Chiron return to also which we just finished up the Neptune opposition, all of these things for the United States shows that we are in a deep state of reevaluating who in the world we are. And I think that that is really at the basis of this chart and what we're going to be talking about. Uh, yeah, that is really what's happening here. So I circled this, and the sun is the people. The moon, or in this chart, when we're looking at it from specific significators, we have Chiron tied in here as well. And it is the Chiron return, and Chiron on its own signifies feeling it wounding as well as separation, isolation, anything that we carry with us that we just can't seem to work through is Chiron, the burdens that we carry through life. And so this is suggesting that there are burdens that are coming forward that we're working through, that we're moving through this new beginning with with this strongly on our minds, that there are some deep wounds that need to be addressed as we move forward.
Do you have a sense of what those wounds are, like based on the chart?
Well, based on the chart, it being in the ninth house signifies that there's something spiritual, that there's something belief wise. I think beliefs really is a bigger theme. The ninth house on its face is very positive, but then when you're looking at the wounds of the ninth house, it's like there's the thing that comes to my mind is that, which is something that is a phrase that's holds dear to me, is that there's nothing sacred anymore, and that this lack of sacred elements in our life can lead us to maybe running towards things that fill the hole of that. It looks like there's a hole within our sacred space. It looks like there's a hole within the understanding of ourselves within a larger cosmic sense, and also just a lack of belonging within a spiritual community as well as having a spiritual leader too. And that there's this real gaping hole within many of us that we may be clamoring to fill at this time.
Yeah, and I think that the Jupiter square the ascendant in this chart really corroborates what you're saying. And so
Mhm.
does the Mercury retrograde conjunct this Chiron to some extent, that the thought process is, um, and then that Jupiter, what we're hungry for, and then this loaded ninth house are all pointing to something about beliefs being so pivotal, and possibly part of what's causing some of the challenges and separation that are occurring.
Mhm.
Um, because we see that too, because the ruler of this eclipse and of the ninth house is that Mars,
Mhm.
in Pisces conjunct Saturn.
Yeah. And if you look at the declination as well, which I don't have up here, you'll find that Mars and Saturn are contraparallel to this eclipse as well, which the Mars and the Saturn are just their voice, I think it's very parallel in many ways to what Chiron is saying, which is that there's pain, that there's something that we've lost, that we're losing, that there's a wound within us, and we want to move forward, but there's something blocking us.
Mm-hmm. And the that Mars is also the ruler of the fourth house. And so we know this is really happening like on the ground in our country,
Yes.
within our land and families.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's hitting us very personally and close to home, you could say. This sense of separation, this,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other important piece of this is that we have that the ruler of our government leaders is this Venus right here,
In
and
detriment.
in detriment in the ninth house. So it's like the leaders are trying to speak to the troubles that the people are having, but they're just not probably doing a good job. Like it really looks like the way that I looked at this over and over again is that, and I'm not sure if it's the current leadership who's in office now, because that's who this chart is speaking to. But there's a lot that suggests that there's a big struggles that this current administration is going to be going through over the next 6 months for sure.
Do you think that the sextile to Pluto, that the leaders sextiling Pluto
Mhm.
can offer us anything in terms of potential positive outcomes, or that the leadership is helping us do some of that kind of shadow work that the Pluto's bringing forth with the Pluto return for our country, that at least they're mobilizing and getting the conversations going and helping us excavate some of this stuff about how we feel in this country and some of our
Yeah.
origin story, and how much that was profoundly rooted in belief and separation. And then all of this, in this chart is occurring in the sign of Aries. And so our that impetus um for independence, for it is the strike of the match, I think, this
Yes.
Aries, this kind of impulsive childlike initiative. And also it's, it has so much to do with our ability to our grasping for, our demands, our needs, our wants, you know.
Yes, there is a futile nature to it, and
Mhm.
it's interesting having that in the ninth house too, which futility and higher minded spirituality, I think, can tend to lead towards hubris and miss and a spiritual experience, an empty spiritual experience, or one that doesn't fully nurture us,
Mhm.
potentially. So
Yeah.
while there is this yearning and even a powerful, potentially powerful response towards what the people are yearning for, that I don't know if the I don't know if it's going to actually fill the void that's trying to be filled. So
Yeah, and at the same time, we've got the Jupiter Uranus in
yes.
the 10th house, just creating this, I mean, it just gives you the feeling that anything could happen.
Anything could happen.
And the whole spectrum of potentials with Jupiter Uranus can be so, I mean, anything from like, um, it could be more positive iterations of
Absolutely.
that freedom and the lightning strikes, that anything that could happen, the sudden leaps in consciousness, or and at the same time it can be all of the magnification of the disruption, the instability, the
Mhm.
sudden, it could be really sudden, even catastrophic changes within leadership.
Yeah, the leadership situation does not look stable.
No.
I think that would be my blanket statement, is that the leadership does not look stable. And I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're going to throw us a curveball where, that we can't even begin to imagine at this moment. And that does look quite possible, but I'm not sure if that curveball is going to be one that uh, keeps them in office or doesn't, basically. And it looks like there is the potential for some interesting developments. I guess I will say that for sure.
Yeah, and because that planetary combination is squaring the ascendant, I mean, it's
Mhm.
really tied into our experience as the people, in a very
Absolutely.
personal way. And so,
Yeah,
yeah, it's going to be a wild ride for the next 6 months.
absolutely. And that Jupiter is just reinforcing the topics of the ninth house as well, which is that our beliefs in general are very much on the table. What do we
Mhm.
believe? And are those beliefs going to separate us, or are they going to keep us together? And that's, I think, something that we're going to bring forward as we move to the next chart.
Yeah, I really love to, after having a look at the traditional chart, I really love to pull up the dial because it gives you a very different feeling seeing all of these things kind of light up simultaneously and reinforce these stories.
Yes. Yeah, it's very powerful too. And I'm going to change this. And we're going to move this up here to the Aries point. For those of you who aren't familiar with Uranian astrology, working with the dial, the Aries point represents the world at large. So it's really useful when looking at mundane astrology. And do you want to talk about what's up here, what this is pointing towards, Sara?
Yeah, so right away, as we put that big pointer on the Aries point, which is opening up our relationship to the world, we see, if you look at the line there, we see the node Saturn. And in Uranian astrology, the nodal axis really speaks to relationship and connections between people. And so Saturn, you don't want Saturn connected to the nodes because it really speaks of loss, separation, conflict, boundaries, challenges within the people. And all of this tying into the world picture, is a little daunting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think we looked at this and it felt like it was really kind of tying in a lot of ways uh to the Chiron, Mars, Saturn influence, that sort of thing.
The separation that I mean, even within the country, the level of division, Saturn rules boundaries and those places between those borderlands. And,
Hmm.
so the separation, I think it's going to be a continuation in some ways of that, of sort of some of the bipartisan extremist
Hmm.
thing. We're not really
Yeah.
operating as one nation anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that this chart's really bringing up anything that we're not already experiencing, um, is part of that too. But I think it is going to possibly become more inflated. Okay, so the next place that I'm going to move the dial is to the eclipse itself, the Sun Moon Chiron conjunction. And when we bring that up, we see this connection with Mercury Chronos. And this was really interesting because on its face, much like the ninth house and the Jupiter that we were talking about before when we were on the regular chart, those can be very optimistic. And this on its own suggests very strong, prominent words and someone who can communicate big ideas powerfully, like the words of a leadership. And this made me wonder, in the context, especially of the harshness that we're seeing as well. On top of that, is that in the emergence of possibly leadership of a nation that's kind of falling apart or going through a challenging time, even just as a country in general, is there someone or some organization or something that's coming forward with a powerful uh, theme of something for people to lean on to fill those proverbial holes within themselves that we were talking about before, to fill people with hope and excitement, and for to give them something to centralize their beliefs around, which is also very much ninth house as well.
Yes, because Chronos really speaks to um like nobility and higher ways of thinking.
Mhm.
And so when I see this Mercury Chronos, I think of topics around morality and ethics really coming forward, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the leadership is expressing true honorable morality and ethics, but
Yes.
they might be drawing people into their camp based on ideas about morality. And that's sort of reiterated with, we see that Jupiter ties into this planetary picture. We see Apollon tied into this planetary picture. Oh no,
Mhm.
Jupiter's not there. It's
Uh,
just
yeah.
Apollon.
Avalon.
And I think the fact that Cupido shows up in this planetary picture as well really speaks to like some level of charisma, or the people being swayed, or the people becoming tribal or around the idea of beliefs.
Yeah, if there's this air of a really good thing happening, and with the underlying other pieces, I think it keeps making me wonder, is it really that good?
Mhm.
and and I loved what you said that about morality and our perception of reality. And I think that's something really important to maybe just pause and make note of as we move forward into this next 6 months, is making sure that your morality arrow is really pointed north, and recalibrating and grounding. And if you start to get pulled into some of this energy that looks like it could be swirling around in our world, that maybe sitting back and asking, is this really worth getting so fanatically involved in? It does look there like there's the potential for fanatic involvement for sure. And and yeah.
I
So
think,
just
when you talk about it maybe not being as great, as good as it seems, I think that's because, like, if we go to the Mars Saturn midpoint, and because we know that the Mars
yeah.
Saturn is showing up in the chart, you see it very obviously on the traditional chart. But we know that all of these forces are coming together in a way that ultimately leads to a loss of vitality, separation, challenges, diminishment. And here in this picture, can you highlight, Lisa, the Mercury Volcanus?
Yes.
Because for those that aren't familiar with the trans-Neptunian planets, the Volcanus is sort of a magnifier. It's going to potentiate and anything it touches. And here we have it sitting in relationship with this Mercury retrograde. Like you said, it was in the ninth house. And so these ideas around what's happening too with the media and the news and things being so I think of hyperbole when I see that Volcanus next to Mercury, but things being so sensationalized. And because Jupiter shows up on this planetary picture, Jupiter Cupido, it really made me think about confirmation bias and how that's at work and driving some of the separation we feel as a people, is that we are being spoon-fed more of our own ideology. And so I think it's leading to some of those more extremist camps. And we see Uranus here as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think, which brings in that technology piece and people making rash decisions and rash conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and all of that pivoting around this Mars Saturn. So,
Yeah.
in Uranian astrology, when we want to investigate something, we sort of look for that on the dial and see what planetary pictures emerge. And so this picture really is, we're asking in a way, what is the challenge? What is the separation? What is the hardship about? And we're seeing that it's about ideology and belief, Jupiter, Cupido. We're seeing that it's about the dissemination of news, information, and how we think, Mercury, Vulcanus. And we're seeing Uranus there, I think, suggesting that, pointing towards the overall instability of this period of time, as well as, like I said, some of the influence of technology in the dysfunction that's occurring here.
Yeah, and Hades is right there too,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is really, that's a, it brings in the note of all of this stuff that's happening. It is kind of, it's leading to the degradation of society in general, what we're, to this picture that we're looking at. It adds the idea that the news that we're having brought in, the community that we think is so good, that there's actually this tinge of grossness, of something that's actually not serving us, something that on the back end might actually be leading to our destruction somehow. And as well as just, it's not giving us the growth that we think it is, which I think, which also is reiterated by the fact that we're looking at it on the Mars Saturn midpoint. So
It's almost like it's showing us our dark underbelly too,
yes,
like,
it's definitely showing us that. It's showing us the ways, it's basically lifting up the curtain, which so much of this is, or the rug, and saying, look at all the things you've swept under it, and are you ready to deal with it? And it's hard to say with this picture if we're actually looking at it or not, but there's definitely a strong invitation to.
yeah. So, yeah, for those that aren't familiar with Uranian astrology, it's a wonderful research tool. And so when we see something in the traditional chart, that picks our interest or we want to explore deeper, this is a great way to explore it. I think it's interesting that a lot of the research, um, at the origin, the exception, the people who are really studying these places in the sky started in World War II, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of world events happening, and there was a lot of division and divisiveness. And um, it's just interesting that here we are, 100 years later, and we're seeing these same kind of dynamics
Yeah.
emerge, and these points, these very sensitized places in the sky activated around, yeah, some of these themes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing, part of this picture that's really powerful that we didn't speak to yet is, ooh, sorry, excuse my drawing, is the MC to the eclipse itself, the sun moon Chiron as well. And in Uranian astrology, the MC is the most sensitive point in the chart, and it speaks to what's happening at this moment for this chart being in the 6 month span of time. And the sun, from a universal perspective, is the leadership, the moon is the people, and the Chiron, just from a very general sense, is sickness and on just being unwell. Like there's the general themes that we've spoken to before. And so we have the highlight of this next 6 months being possibly even us trying to heal ourselves as well, because Chiron is also the wounded healer, and part of the dynamic is part of the healing. And maybe that is an element of the positive trajectory that we can take with this as well, is ultimately we're all trying to heal ourselves, and we're all trying to be better people, hopefully. And uh yeah, and that the way that we're constantly trying to heal ourselves, hopefully helping other people as well. I'm not sure if that's exactly how that's going to play out, but it is part of the archetype of these three planets together, and it's being highlighted as well. However, with the Mars Saturn orientation and then some of the other stuff, it can just be another invitation to work with our dirty underbelly, our nasty
Well,
underbelly. And
yeah, that was one of the yeah, a couple of thoughts that occurred to me. Is one is it's really showing us what remains in terms of what needs to be tended to and healed,
Mhm.
as as a country, within our systems that regulate the power between the people and the leadership.
Yeah.
Um, as well as, this planetary picture speaks to some of the wounding being around, like you said, the belief system, those ninth house topics. We see, the Jupiter Cupido in this picture. And so it kind of shows us that the wounding has something to do with our beliefs, as well as with Mercury Volcanus in that picture, our thinking. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, part of this, in terms of what we might think about personally on the individual level, moving through these next 6 months, I think, is really examining what we believe and think. You don't, I've recently heard Dr. Ammon in California was talking about how one of the indicators of mental and emotional resilience is not believing everything you think. And maybe
Mm.
this chart kind of speaks to a little caution
Yeah,
about, you don't have to believe everything
absolutely.
you think, nor do you have to believe what the leadership is dishing out for you.
Hmm.
And maybe we can kind of hold some Jupiterian vision or ideal, and like you said, maybe we can be on that healing journey by envisioning what we want, by having a sense of optimism, by trying to take that sort of tribalism signature that you see in the Jupiter Cupido and
Hmm.
expand that, let more people into it.
Yeah.
Recognize that we want to hold that for our whole country, not just for the people who believe the exact same as we do, but we want
Hmm.
to unite as a people and be able to hold space for the diversity of thought within our country.
Yeah. I mean, and I kind of building off of that too, is that another way to look at the Mars Saturn is just it's work that we do.
Yes.
It's very activating. It's taking strong, meaningful, persistent steps forward towards something. And it's like the proverbial fire under our butts in this chart saying, come on, there's things to do. And if we kind of spin this a little bit, there's work to do within our communities in order to bring hope there. There's healing within our communities that need to have happen, and consolidation as well. Instead of this separation, it feels like it's almost speaking to both. Like there's the potential for separation, and there's work that we need to do in order to bring things together. And we can use that through our strong voices and our changing our frame of mind. And there's a lot of hope here as well. And I like that. I like that it's we kind of get both because there's action within it. And with action, we can actually put one step in front of the other and create the world that we're hoping that we're envisioning for ourselves, and hopefully be somewhere near the same page together.
I love it. I love it that you brought it back to the Mars Saturn, because it makes me think about the initial chart and all of that Aries energy.
Hmm.
The
It's
Saturn
very
doesn't just have to be delays and restrictions, it can be constructive effort. And
yeah.
so I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up, is that whatever, if we're going to be moving forward slowly and tentatively, and we might be grappling with some of these feelings of separation, challenge, and feeling some of the volatility that's happening within the media and the uncertainty of our leadership.
Hmm.
Can we do, like, Saturn is just that, putting one foot in front of the other. Can we do the slow, hard work and hold on to an ideal or a vision and stay tethered to that throughout the turbulence that this Jupiter Uranus, brings?
Yeah, it definitely gives us clear a clear path to walk down potentially, and like the work to do. It gives us our to-do list in order to achieve what we want. So
Yeah.
very nice. All right. Well, there's a million more things we could say about this. We could go on for another half an hour, but we won't do that to all of you. So we'll close out here. But thank you so much for following us, and please do follow us on YouTube. We're slowly building our podcast presence, eventually to Apple Podcast as well as Spotify. So we'll let you know as we slowly grow that as well. You can find ways to reach out to us in the links below in our YouTube. And please, if you're interested in doing any live readings of your natal charts or solar return charts or anything else that you're interested in going over live with us, we're very interested in doing that. We really want to turn this into a place where astrologers can come together, or non-astrologers, and we can just play with astrology, basically. So we're really excited to do all of this with all of you. Please reach out if you have any suggestions or want to share your chart. And yeah, I think that's about it. So thanks again for being here. It means a lot. And we will see you on the next one. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.